the game has really changed. Society has changed a lot. Especially for opportunities in life. There's a real lack of opportunities. So if you're looking to make money or date, the opportunities just aren't there like they were 10 plus years ago. I went out on the weekend, went out Saturday night, and even if I get results, like even if I go out and I hook up with a chick or something, because we go out to the bars for that reason, don't we? Guys do anyway. Girls have their own reasons for being there. So even if I have a successful night where I manage to hook up with someone who I find attractive, I just don't really enjoy it. I'm not enjoying it because I feel like I'm forcing this unnatural situation to occur, It doesn't feel like the natural way of things like it used to 10 years ago, where everyone was doing this, everyone was going to bars. Everyone wasn't hooking up, but that's why a lot of people went to bars. Now people aren't going to bars to hook up. Like a lot of women now are going to bars to socialize with their friends. Now dating apps are where people get their hookups and their fun, But it used to be, before dating apps took off massively during COVID, it used to be bars, nightlife, dance festivals, social interactions. That's where people would find hookups, and partners and stuff. But now it's like everything's online now. So when I do go out, and I'm still trying to stay like at my peak, I'm trying to stay at my peak. I don't want to become like introverted. I am introverted, but I don't want to become like shy. I'm still shy. I don't want to become passive and inactive. I want to still be the guy that takes action, because that's how I was raised. I'm from the 90s, born in the 80s, but raised in the 90s and the 2000s, and it was all about taking action, being motivated, working hard, staying focused. Gen Z aren't about that anymore. Gen Z are now all self-obsessed, fitness freaks. I was a fitness freak, but I was like an outlier. In the 2000s, I was the outlier, being the guy in the gym. Now everyone's in the gym, But they're all like health obsessed, they don't drink. When I go out to clubs, the Gen Z, they're not partying, they're not letting loose. They're all like, stuck up and like in their heads and staring at everyone, and like, these young guys, they're not like living in the moment anymore. They're all like, they see me and they always look at me because I'm like, I try to be very alive and take action and be the guy who's like, not be the guy, but try and enjoy the moment. I don't want to be like the guy who I used to be, 2 years ago. When I wasn't taking action, I was like stuck in my head, dwelling on negativity. I'd go to a bar and I'd just stand there like them and be frustrated that I'm not, I'd be jealous of the guys that are able to talk to women there, because I can't do that. I couldn't do it, I couldn't do it. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to do it smoothly, I did in my 20s. I was naturally good at it, but then like I went through stuff and then I got real stuck in my head and I became a very analytical person. I used to be very emotional. Then I became very analytical after my late 20s into my 30s. So I started to become very analytical, extremely analytical. So I started analysing everything. It started to give me anxiety and a lot of self-doubt. And I started getting stage fright and overthinking everything. So then in my 30s, I was just like the guy who was too scared to, walk up to the attractive girls and talk to them. So I have to force myself out of that, because for 7 years, I was getting nowhere. For 7 years, I was just becoming like this friggin' nerd, just obsessing over, politics and finance and crypto and all this stuff. and investing and all that. And in negativity, all this negative toxic material as well, sitting on 4chan for friggin' 8 hours a day. High on stimulants, coffee and vaping and 4chan and just toxic, arguing all day. I did that for like friggin' 7 years because I lost my social capabilities. I used to be like, I'm not an overthinker. I used to be an underthinker. I was a chronic underthinker, and I just live in the moment and have fun. And then I completely flipped and became a chronic overthinker. And when that happened, I realized there's friggin' no benefit, man. The benefit to overthinking is long-term survival, You can strategize and survive long-term. Underthinkers who just live in the moment, you can fall into a lot of traps, destructive traps, And it's not really safe to be an underthinker. It can be fun, but it's not safe. You need, you don't know how to plan, strategize, and survive in a dangerous environment. But an overthinker can do all those things. So I became an overthinker, and I wasn't taking action. I wasn't enjoying myself in social settings anymore. So I had to figure out, how can I start enjoying myself again? Like, what do I want to do when I'm out? I don't want to have conversations, If I want to learn about stuff, I read it. I read it online. So I don't really learn anything from people anymore. Like, I used to be the opposite. In my 20s, I used to love talking to people and learning from them, and hearing their stories, and they tell me about anything. They tell me about, history or anything like that, and I'd just be captivated. But now I don't care what people say. Maybe it's because I've gotten old. But if I want to know about, what caused World War One, I'll just look it up. Or now I'll talk to ChatGPT about it, and I'll keep, so why'd that happen? Why'd this happen? And I'll talk to ChatGPT for like a few hours. Or I'll go on Reddit and I'll type it in on Reddit and read what everyone says about it. I don't really like talking about these things in public anymore, or to other people. I've become very in my head. But so that was my situation. Is like, I wasn't enjoying socializing anymore because I feel like I didn't want anything from anyone. But at the same time, I don't like just being inside all day on the internet. I don't like it. It makes me anxious, makes me frustrated because I'm sort of get bored. At the same time, I like socializing, but my new bar of socializing now is not just talking to people. Now for me it's like just crazy things, When I socialize, I'm like over the top. I like to sort of be very over the top of things. I can't just go to a social meetup and have like a conversation about, trivial things. I want to be talking big things, Like, how can we make opportunistic? How can we make the most of this interaction? What do you do for a living? Are you involved in a hobby I do? How can we get together and collaborate? So that's how I've become now. It could be like social media. Everything's like instant gratification. You got to get instant gratification, dopamine spikes from every interaction now in public. But yeah, so I was out on the weekend, and that's what I noticed with this nightlife, man. It's changed a lot. The game has changed a lot. Okay, my analytical mind now has realized, can see how much the game has changed. It's not like it was 10, 15 years ago when everyone was going to the clubs for fun with an open mind, meeting strangers. Now, no one wants to meet strangers when they go to a club, especially women. They don't want to interact with strangers. It can be very hard to get her invested in you now when you go to a club especially in Australia, UK, Canada, these Commonwealth countries have this very conformist culture where people don't take risks. It's very safe. And safe is the opposite of fun. You can't have fun when there's all these rules and all this safety, you know? People have fun when there's more risk, there's more freedom and opportunity for discovery and new things. In Australia, we don't have that. Everything is safe, controlled, censored, risk-free, you know, it's just boring. It's a boring country, and it always was like that, but it just got worse. You know, it's gotten worse and worse, and now it's just real bad. You know, entire demographics now can't use social media. That's coming in December. Under 16 is not allowed to use social media. They banned vaping. You know, alcohol's really, all these taxes on alcohol. So alcohol's really expensive. Alcohol and cigarettes. So, you know, drugs are really expensive. It's just no fun in this freaking country, man. This country's good if you've got a good job. If you've got a good job, you come from a good social circle, so you get set up with a good partner to have a good family. But if you're like me, like a social outcast, a loner, who wants to seek opportunities and be an entrepreneur, Australia is the worst freaking country in the Western world. You know, America's the best. But America's, like I said, America's a lot less safe. It's a lot more risky there. But if you've got the willpower and the a small bit of talent, but you've got the willpower, the work ethic, and the willingness to learn and change, you can achieve great things in America. There's way more opportunity with dating. You know, it's a lot. The social circle dynamic is not, the social clickiness is not like it is here in Australia. Everyone's very clicky. They don't want to meet strangers. They stay in their little groups. They stay in their little communities here. You know, everything is, you know, hookups here or online. And online's the worst thing, man, because online you are judged entirely for what you provide. You know, your physical appearance, who you are, you know, your job. You're just judged entirely logically, you know. There's no personality. You don't get a chance to show your vibrant personality or anything like that when you're online. You know, you can do that once you've got the date, but to get the date, she first needs to see that you have the right look, you have the right, you know, lifestyle and all that thing. It's just like, it's really, there's no social mobility with dating in Australia. America has probably a lot more social mobility. From what it seems, I haven't been there, but from what I can tell, the social mobility in America is a lot better. At the same time, there's less safety nets in America and all that. So it's got its pitfalls, but for having fun and for self-improvement, America is much better. Australia is good if you've got all these weaknesses, you know, there's all these safety nets for you and protections and all that. But at the same time, it's really hard to level up here. You know, you can't get a house now in Australia. It's really hard to get a house. If you're just making $100K a year, you're not going to get a house anywhere decent in Australia anymore, you know. And that's on $100K a year. That's how bad it is. But at the same time, it's really hard to get homeless here. There's, you know, Centrelink is really easy to get, and there's lots of social safety nets and all that. So you're pretty much stuck in this friggin' robotic middle class, lower middle class now. Now it's lower middle class. We used to be stuck in a middle class lifestyle, middle to upper middle class. Now everyone's stuck in this lower middle class where everyone's renting for life and stuff like that. But I rant. But yeah, so my experience on the weekend, I went out on the weekend, pushed myself to go out. You got to push yourself, guys. You got to friggin' push yourself, man. It's hard. I know it's hard. I'm telling you, it's hard. It's friggin' hard. Don't listen to these guys on YouTube, these PUA guys and all that, who make it look easy because they're out there in friggin' Barcelona or Serbia, Poland, friggin' Bali, all these areas that are designed for social interactions. You know, they're just sort of like they're holiday destinations, or they've got like a real high volume of people that are approachable, you know, things like that. They'll go there and they'll do all their videos, and they'll cut out all the bad interactions and only show the good ones and make you think like you're doing something wrong. Like, well, how come when I go out and I try to talk to people, everyone ignores me, no one wants to have a conversation, but I see this guy and she's talking to him for freaking 10 minutes and she's really receptive. Well, is he in your country? If he's not in your country, if this guy is doing game in friggin' Belfast or something, or the one I saw was Belgrade, and you're living in Liverpool, you ignore him. He's in a different environment. It's like the guy who goes to South America. You know, the Western white guy goes to South America and talks about how easy dating is. Dating's so amazing, easy for me, you know. And he will say this online where you can't see the context of his situation. Well, how are you guys struggling with dating? I'm doing fine. He doesn't reveal that he's in South America, you know. He's a Westerner. He doesn't reveal that he's a passport bro. So ignore all these guys online that make it seem like, you know, dating's a cold approach. That's what I mean by dating. Cold approach is easy, or it's still as easy as it was. It was never easy. Cold approach was always hard. But if you took the action in the past, you'd get results, you know. In the past, if you took the action, you'd get results. Now, you know, in my experience, and from all the guys I'm watching, a lot of times you can't get the results, no matter how much effort you put in. Or you will get the results. You'll get some results, but it's just diminished. Like, you know, the results now, you're getting less, you're doing more work for less. Like it's like a kind of a shrinkflation type of thing, you know, So that's my my perception from what I see now. So I went out on the weekend, pushed myself. You got to push yourself because that's the way it is now. It's harder now, but at the same time, recognize that it's harder because, like, you don't want to beat yourself up and think, well, I'm doing things the wrong way. There's something wrong with me. I don't look good enough. And you make all these, and you have all these negative views of yourself because for some reason people aren't being receptive to you. You might not realize that society has become less receptive to meeting strangers, interacting with strangers in public. So that you can take the pressure off, you know, recognize that it is harder now. So you don't have to push yourself to achieve the results that people were achieving 10 years ago. You don't have to beat yourself up because you're not achieving those results. It's okay. It's harder for everyone. But you do need to push yourself harder now because not everyone is doing it. You know, there's been a huge decline in the cold approach culture. You know, I'm sure a lot of you older guys would have probably seen how all the forums, I was never on the forums, but I was in the community. They've all died off, you know, like 80% reduction in just the cold approach pickup culture has all died off. Now, it used to be considered normal to walk up to girls on the street and compliment them and try and pick them up. That used to be relatively a normal thing to do, even though guys were still anxious about it. You know, it was still normal. You know, we had movies based on that, Hitch and Alfie and The Spread with Ashton Kutcher. You know, there was a lot of, you know, it was mainstream culture to pick up girls by walking up to them in public. But now, it's not mainstream anymore. So it's harder now because not everyone's doing it. You feel more resistance. You know, humans are naturally conformist. So when no one's doing cold approach, it feels hard to be that one person who goes against the grain and does it. Especially cold approach, where you get rejected and then you start having self-doubt and thinking, am I doing something wrong? You know, have I done something wrong? So it could be harder to deal with the rejections and self-doubt when not everyone is doing it with you and you're like the odd one out. But yeah, so you do have to push yourself in that sense, but at the same time, you don't have to push yourself to to go too hard. Like, oh, I've got to be more direct. I've got to take more risks, you know. I think that stuff will come with time, man. Like for me, when I started going out, like 3 years ago, when I started pushing myself to leave the house and go out and talk, because I just wasn't having any relationships, man. You know, for like 5-6 years, I wasted my 30s just on the internet, dwelling in negativity, and I just had enough, man. I was hoping like my mind would fix itself, and I'd get my old social capabilities back, but it didn't happen. I realised it's not going to happen. I've got to force myself to go out there and meet people, talk to girls. So that's what I did around age 37, and I'm going to be turning 40 soon. I've just focused on trying to not age, try to look after my health. I know it's not good to live in this friggin' bunker with no window. It's not really good for your mindset. But I still try and look after my physical health because, like I said, I don't want to look old. That is going to demoralize me. I like going out, man. I like going to clubs. I like the party atmosphere. I like it and I hate it. Like I hate the awkwardness I feel when I don't drink and no one's socializing, and so I feel like I've got to be this weird guy who's straight and sober and walking up to these girls and getting rejected and blown off and feeling embarrassed, and guys are looking at me and they're like laughing, but at the same time I still like the emotions, I still like the energy. So it's a double-edged sword. I hate it and I like it, But yeah, that was my experience on the weekend. Lost track of what I was saying. My experience on the weekend was pretty much going out. I think I only went out Saturday night to a bar, and it was this really low quality bar. When I say low quality, it's more like just low standards. They let anyone in, and the place just gets packed with it's probably like 75% guys, 25% girls. Especially as the night gets on, after like 11 o'clock, the women start to leave and the men will hang around hoping to get lucky. And it's just like a real low quality bar. The women that go there are very shut off. They usually go there with their work friends. It's one of those after work bars that turns into a club. They're usually there with their work friends, or they're there to meet up their friends. They're not really there to sort of have fun and party. It's one of those bars for older people. The age range there is like 25 to friggin' 55. So there's a lot of guys in there. They're middle aged. I'm middle aged now. I went there and it's just gotten worse, man. Like guys just aren't confident anymore. A lot of them just stand around looking. There's like the dance floors in the middle, and you got the bar on the side, and then what you have is just like this audience. It's like a football game. It's like an audience of dudes who stand around watching the dance floor where all the girls and some guys are dancing and having fun, and then you've just got this stadium audience of dudes who are surrounding the dance floor, standing there looking, afraid to go out and talk to them. I can't remember if it was that bad, back in the day, 10, 15 years ago. But now it feels like that. But also I've changed as well. Like I said, I've become less confident, less socially free now. I'm now more analytical myself. But yeah, I preferred it back in the day when everyone, but I guess I was younger, things are more fun when you're young. But when I was young, man, guys were just not all guys, but a lot of guys were just pushing themselves to be confident and social, and are doing crazy things in bars. I remember guys would. This wasn't that common, but it was a sort of a thing some would do. Some would take their shirt off and walk around shirtless, to sort of build that confidence and lower their inhibition And guys are doing all kinds of crazy things like that to sort of enhance their social skills. But now people don't really do that, those crazy things. Not in Australia anyway. Everyone's like a lot more conformist. Everyone's become a lot more robotic now. I don't see the Gen Z taking those sort of risks, and people were drinking more back then. Gen Z just aren't taking these risks. They're not having fun and letting loose like they used to. And millennials as well, they're not drinking like we used to in our 20s. I was one of the few guys who didn't drink. I'd go out to clubs a lot and not drink. That was somewhat rare. It became more popular as like red pill stuff started picking up, and society, young guys started becoming anti-drinking and just focusing on developing your personality. So I was one of the few guys who didn't drink and just went out to clubs, maybe have one beer or none at all. But yeah, the environment has changed a lot, man. The environment has changed a lot. And it's objectively true. You can look up stats like nightlife, clubs and bars, they've declined 50% since the 90s. Look at Berlin. There was a YouTube video recently. Berlin nightlife, which used to be like the nightlife capital of the world in terms of like dance music and all that. Not dance music, EDM, those type of raves, things like that. It used to be the capital in the world for raves. I was watching this video and they're talking about in the 90s and early 2000s how there was all these vacant warehouses in Berlin that they turned into raves. And that's an amazing environment for cold approaching and hookups, because there's just everyone's out partying, letting loose on drugs. They're meeting new people. They're open to new experiences. You walk up to a girl and you've got great energy. She'd be all over you. She might not like go home with you, but you'd have an opportunity to win her over. But now it's not like that. Now there's, in Berlin, there's been a 50% decline in those type of venues. So in that type of venue, and that's worldwide. It's worldwide. I see that here in Australia. A lot of places that used to be open, they've closed down. They've turned into a restaurant now or a bar. They're no longer a nightclub. There used to be a venue for each day of the week. Sunday, there'd be like 2 or 3 venues you could go to in town. Monday, there'd be another venue you could go to. And all these venues would be packed on these nights. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. They'd all have a packed venue. Sometimes there'd be two different venues on a Wednesday night. Now, there's only Friday, Saturday, maybe Thursday. And maybe Sunday. When I was growing up in Perth on a Sunday, they'd call it the Sunday session. There was like 6 or 7 venues you could go to that would be full of people, just crowded. This was on a Sunday before the work day on a Monday, and people will get drunk and have a good time. They go to work the next day hungover. People were just partying in the 2000s. It was crazy. And now this is just not like that. So that's the situation right now. Yeah, I want to do a vlog. Maybe someone who comes across this might find it useful. Probably won't be a lot of people coming across this. I don't promote these videos or anything. It's just talking into the void. But that was my experience on Saturday, Saturday night when I went out. Nightlife is harder now. Nightlife is much harder now. Harder to socialise. Everyone's more cliquey. Everyone's sober. Everyone's stuck in their head and staying in their own little groups. And everyone's more formal now. Even in clubs, everyone's more formal, sober and formal, and it's like everyone's in business mode. Australia's particularly bad. I think it's better in America. In fact, I know it's better in America because I'm watching that Texas street fight videos, and I can just see how people are still very loose over there and taking risks, and things are a bit crazy over there, they've got everyone's getting into fights on the street. That's how Perth, that's how Australia used to be. Those Texas street fight videos, where you see just people punching on, getting into fights, and everyone's all staggering around drunk and loose. That's what Australia used to be like 10, 15 years ago. People were fighting and just drunk and loose and hooking up and mingling and all that. So Australia's particularly bad for cold approaching and nightlife. If you're doing game, and self-improvement. Still doable though. Like I said, I did have some success on Saturday, but I didn't enjoy it like I did when I was younger, when I felt like everyone else is doing it. I just feel like the odd one out. I like feeling like the odd one out. I do think it's better to fit in. Being the odd one out feels lonely and can make you anxious and all that. So I don't like being the odd one out. I liked it back in the old days when there was like a lot more guys were doing the same thing, were mass approaching and being confident and escalating. Back those RSD guys, RSD, Tyler and Julian, I used to watch them. My friends used to watch them back in the day, and they were like, I didn't do what they were doing, man, and I don't do it now. Like back, what they used to do, they'd walk up to just girls on the street and just grab their hand and start dancing with them, I don't think guys can do that now. We don't have the same sort of mindset now, the patriarchal society where men are sort of confident and in charge. Now guys are scared of women. They're scared to walk up to a girl and be confident, because girls now are more masculine. They'll yell at you. Everyone will look at you like you're weird. Everyone's guys are more anxious now. They're not in state. They're not living in the moment. RSD Jeffy did a video about how everyone feels like they're being recorded now, because everyone's recording, doing their street vlogs now. There's cameras everywhere, so guys now feel like they're more in the spotlight all the time, and it's way harder to have that confidence to just walk up and do crazy things, pick girls up like guys were doing back then. But yeah, so for me, even when I do have success with girls and I go out and I manage to like hook up or something, it's not as fun as it used to be. I feel like I am forcing like a weird interaction, an unnatural interaction, because no one else is sort of doing this, So I see some people doing it, and there might be some guys watching here, people who are watching who are in America where it's more, they see it happening more often. But in Australia, it's like, I don't see it that often, people hooking up. That's it, I don't stay late. I usually leave clubs at like 12 a.m. when I go out on the weekends. I'm not the one who stays out to 3 a.m. and all that. But I might, sometimes I'll go out for like a month and I only see one couple hook up who they met at the bar, And I think I'm pretty perceptive, perceptive of my surroundings. Just doesn't happen that often, And I don't see guys doing the crazy things they used to do, being bold and confident, like they used to back in the day. And I'm still trying to live like that, because that's what you need to do to succeed, That's what you had to. That's how guys used to be. The guys who were successful used to be the real confident ones who escalated straight away with girls and just took the lead and all that. Women aren't going to take the lead, even if they like you, unless they're like really, really into you. They're not going to carry the interaction. It's the man's job to lead. But yeah, that's my vlog for today, my ramble. If anyone finds any utility out of it, that's good. And yeah, I'll catch you on the next vlog.